Thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity. Arnaud, a good friend of mine and former colleague. It's great to be able to be here and to finally get up and platform. I've been in the content designers group in China for right from the inception, and it's really been a goal of mine to get up and speak, and I'm glad I'm finally able to do it. And yeah, so a little bit of information about myself first. Right, I'm the managing director, Jared Thompson of Inquill Agency, and Inquill Agency is a full stack agency, and we work exclusively in the renewable energy and sustainability sectors. Building strategies across marketing, development, and sales that help green companies scale their impact. So I worked at Alibaba before, and I really enjoyed that, but I've always been passionate about working in the sustainability and in kind of what I feel is the fight of our life against climate change right now. So, but to be honest, uh, one of the other reasons that I was struggling before, not just at Alibaba, but historically throughout my career, and I couldn't really put a pin in what was holding me back before. And I did a lot of searching, a lot of talking with former colleagues and some other friends, and it finally kind of came to pass that I realized in getting back into the startup life that I needed to communicate a lot more with people who were, heavy decision makers, people with very limited time, people who didn't necessarily know me very well, and I needed to get my meaning across quickly to them. And yeah, on a side, it became a little bit difficult to get everything across and to really get them bought in on my ideas. And that's been something I think I've been struggling with for a long time. So I thought about it a lot. I've worked on a strategy and I've been applying it. And that's kind of what I want to share with you guys today. On a side note, my first idea for this talk was how compelling content might just save the world. Um, but then my COO basically just said, no one's going to take that seriously. You're talking to very professional people. And as you can see, I changed the title, so he won that argument. But in a nutshell, that's me. I'm overly idealistic. I'm energetic. I can be pedantic for anybody that knows me off in real life, and sometimes even a bit exhausting to listen to. Why? Mostly because I can overload people with too much information. All right. So I've actually been told directly that I'm inspiring at times, but I can be really hard to follow. And it stung, but it was fair. So I was typically jumping from idea to idea and kind of drowning people in detail. So I'm sure you guys have seen or been through this or even had this as an issue in yourselves. I mean, have you ever had that report that left you more confused than when you started reading it, or sat through a presentation that hit you with just a fire hose of facts, and at the end you really didn't know anything about those facts, just that things happened, or got a wall of copy for a landing page and was told by the stakeholder or client, just make this better. Do you feel motivated by any of those situations or engaged? No, not really. So why? It's because more information does not automatically equal more clarity, right? It doesn't make things easier if you pour more information on. So actually removing information is something that makes it clearer, right? Paring it down, right? And when it comes to explaining things that are complex, that's even more important because they already are hard to break down and understand. Adding more detail is just going to confuse people further. Um, in our work in UX designers or content strategists, confusing your audience can be a problem, but it's even more important when you're dealing with climate messaging. It just simply can't afford to be confusing. The problem is catastrophic. And in fact, a lot of the issues that we're viewing in climate change right now come down to people just not knowing what to do, not understanding the problem, not having inaction, feeling overwhelmed by all of the issues and the news that they see, but not having any real ideas. So, I mean, if you can't understand the problem or the complex solutions, like how are you ever going to act? How are we ever going to organize people? And what's worse is there's even brands capitalizing on this that are kind of causing this problem, and they don't want to make things clear and they want to muddy the water. And a lot of it's called greenwashing, talking about how they're doing their job when in reality they're not, which all of these companies have been either sued or censured for doing exactly that. Some of them by the internet in general. Shell, who, if you didn't know, accounts for 2% of all global emissions alone, just that one company, was trying to move the blame with this post onto consumers. What are you willing to change to reduce emissions? Right? And about 6,000 people lashed right out at them. So, yeah, they really didn't know their audience. So let's start with that. First thing, if you want to communicate clearly and you want to communicate well, you need to understand your audience, right? Take this for example. If you don't know who you're talking to, you've already lost them. In 1995, Connecticut reached 106 Fahrenheit, the hottest day recorded there. How does anybody feel about that information? 106? Is that very high? Is it low? Don't know. We're not American, most of us. It's only 41 degrees Celsius. So, I mean, how did that feel though? When you see information you don't understand and that doesn't relate to you, instantly, I mean, you're going to shut off emotionally, maybe even get frustrated. But then I lost you. So if you really want to engage your audience, you need to make your content compelling. You need to know who you're talking to, and then you need to speak to them in a way they'll understand. So after working on my own issues with being pedantic and not focused as I communicate, I came up with the model, right? So clear, compelling content won't just help your users change their minds or budgets or careers. Maybe even if done right, could change the entire world. But you have to do three things to make it work. You have to make it clear, you have to make it emotional, you have to make it logical and structured. So I call this the SCS method: sketch, color, and shade. And it's been working for me, and it's what I want to share with you today. So let's jump right into it. Sketch, clarity. How can we make things clear? So when you're thinking about drawing, first you start with the rough area and the idea. You want to make it minimalist, as simple as possible. Just get your message down to the bare bones, right? Try and capture the essence, not give a whole blueprint for what's going on, but just the absolute core. So what's a good example for this? Well, my favorite person for it said, if you can't teach it simply, Richard Feynman, then you probably don't know how to actually understand it. You aren't able to actually understand it well. So he said, if you can't teach to what you're trying to explain to a 10-year-old child, you just don't understand it well enough. In fact, this whole idea, the Feynman method as he was defined, was basically his own way of testing himself to see if he really understood it and to find gaps in how he was communicating. But we can use this, and this is basically the principle behind that sketch idea, to create like a napkin drawing of what you want to get across. The elevator pitch for people who've worked with movies and things before, right? Or in the film industry. So let's give it a try. We have a bunch of people in the call. All of you guys are working at something. How would you describe your job to like a rural aunt and uncle? Let's take a second. Think about it. All right, well, let's try UX designer. So I design user-centered interaction flows that align with business goals while optimizing for accessibility and conversion. Do you think your shushu, who normally works, in construction, has any idea what you just said? So how would we change that? I make apps and websites easier to use. Yeah, that's a perfect example of the Feynman method. Let's try content strategist. I got asked this constantly when I worked at Alibaba. I still never found a good way to describe it. I'd usually give something like, I align content with user journeys, ensuring consistent brand voice and measurable impact across all channels. Again, 7 words that if you don't work in that industry, you have no idea what they mean. And then people looked at me blankly and went, so you write stuff? Well, I help people find the right information at the right time. There you go, right? So, how to sketch an idea. Here's a couple quick principles you can take away with you. What you should not do and what you should do. Don't give more information than is needed. Find the absolute minimum amount to express it. Trim off everything that isn't essential. Don't use jargon or technical terms. Make it as universal as possible. Don't list things. Limit yourself to 1 or 2 sentences at most. Ideally, if you can do it in one, stick to one. Don't use passive language. Use direct statements. Don't assume they understood. Try it out on different people and refine it based on how they respond. And that is exactly how the Feynman method works. So now you have a sketch. What do you do next, though? Well, we don't don't oversimplify it. Make sure it's accurate. So now we have to add some emotion, right? We scroll all day, though. We know this. TikTok factoids, cool science, interesting tips, funny videos. And if I asked you to tell me the last time you went on TikTok or YouTube Shorts and tell me the 3 last videos you watched, I bet nobody in this room could do it. You're not remembering any of them, right? Unless you shared it with a friend. Not because it's not emotional, it's just short-term engagement. It's a little bit of dopamine. You're not really connecting. Emotion is what helps ideas stick. It also helps people care. So, information that doesn't emotionally engage is going to be forgotten. That's the main thing to take away. Emotion equals stickiness. So here's a great book, if you guys haven't checked it out, Made to Stick, by this guy, Chip and Dan Heath, right? So they're authors about business communication and behavioral psychology, and they have an acronym in this book that I think is absolutely perfect, right? Simple, it's success. Simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and story driven. If you can make your content these 6 things, people will remember it, right? It will have an impact. Now, we're not going to go over all these today. We already did simple, that's sketch, but we're going to focus on concrete, emotional, and story driven. All right. So, how to color your content with these 3? Well, concrete is not abstract ideas, but images, right? Something that calls forth something people can see in their mind. That's the easiest way. We live in a visual environment. If you can make something visual, even when you're writing it, people will remember it and connect with it better. So use allegory, use ideas, right? Emotional. Make sure in some way it relates to that person. If you're describing something that has nothing to do with them, like telling your uncle about your job when he doesn't work in that sector, he probably gets bored pretty fast. And then story driven, something that draws us in and makes it more memorable. So let's try blockchain. Something I'm sure people have had tons of people who are very enthusiastic about it try and explain to them before and still left more confused or not caring. Most people, if you ask them what the blockchain is, they would say it's just money without banks, which is incorrect. That's cryptocurrency. It's incredibly oversimplified and it doesn't really make it clearer because who knows how banks work anyway. So, blockchain is like a wedding guest book or like one of those registries at a hotel. Anyone can write in it, no one can edit it, and when the page is full, a new one starts. That's essentially all blockchain is. It's a public ledger that anyone can access, anyone can interact with, and no one can change. So it's immediately understood, it's very specific and detailed, and it creates a clear mental image. So that's, in essence, the best way to make something concrete. How do you make it emotional, though? Well, let's take a look at this guy. Right away, I think some people might be getting anxious. Who's done this before? Gotten bored and started leaning all the way back in their chair? Yeah, well, that's tipping back in your chair, not just leaning. And if you think about climate, we have another term called climate tipping points. And it's a great term because it automatically paints a picture like this person falling, right? And so if you're in your chair and you're imagining tipping backwards and you're trying to go as far as you can, suddenly there is that moment when you stop balancing and you're falling now, and there's no way back until you collapse. That's the emotional edge, right? You can see it, you can feel it. So that one's pretty easy though. Tipping points. Sorry, it's that moment. So tipping points are basically suddenly too late. Let's try this one out. Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, or AMOC. Anybody ever heard of this? It's hard for me to see if anybody would be putting up their hand. I'm getting a no from Arnaud. It's quite a mouthful, but basically it is the movement of ocean currents that changes throughout the Atlantic Ocean, right? Clearly, at least that point we understand. In case you're watching in Chinese and you want to reference it, that's the Chinese name for it. So the AMOC is one of seven critical global climate tipping points that keep scientists up at night. It's a giant ocean conveyor belt that moves water from warm tropical water up and colder water south, right? Up to the north. Actually, I'm going to jump back just now that we have that so people can see it. It goes up here and then the cold water comes back down and they cycle around. So it keeps Europe mild in the cold months. Kind of relevant. You ever imagine why Canada and a lot of Europe are pretty much the same height? But Canada gets very cold, where we have the Mediterranean and Ibiza all the way into, into the late winter. Well, that's because of the AMOC, right? That's why it rarely snows in the UK in the winter. But the AMOC is weakening, and it's actually projected to collapse this century. Well, what does that mean? Why is the AMOC collapse important? Well, it has collapsed before. 12,000 years ago, a sudden freshwater pulse from melting glaciers shut it down. Greenland cooled 3 to 4 degrees Celsius on average and returned to glaciers, just decades, and stayed cold for over 1,000 years, 1,200 to be specific. Weather patterns shifted, whole ecosystems collapsed. If you remember woolly mammoths, that's what killed them. The food disappeared. So if it stops again, this becomes where I'm from. snowier than Newfoundland, permanently. So if you enjoy the Emerald Isle of Ireland and you don't like shoveling snow, the AMOC's very important. Let's look at what else it does. Globally, monsoons will shift, sea levels will surge, tropics will dry out, global agriculture will crash, and billions will need to relocate, triggering a mass climate migration. Not ideal. Oh, and we can't turn it back on. So you can see this is a story now we created out of something you all didn't understand that I think everybody's a little bit more concerned about than when they were 1 minute ago. That's how effective story-driven communication can be. So what's next? Shade. We have emotion, we have our sketch, we have the structure, and we have emotion now. But to be completely honest, people see emotional stuff all the time and they don't engage with it, right? What we need is structure. So if you think about the structure of your content, something larger than a sentence, you can think about it kind of like a bridge. So if your ideas aren't connected well and they're not well ordered, your audience falls through gaps, right? You have to string them together. This is not just true of sentence structure or a film narrative. If you're building a website, if you're creating any type of UX content, if you're writing a report, if your ideas aren't well ordered, people are going to get lost. So structure conveys your meaning. I mean, we know for a fact that just saying things in clear sentences does not make a strong argument. Not one strong argument. I think that entire debate, just people ambling and talking in circles and saying talking points. So how do we make a compelling argument? Well, this woman was sincerely influential in doing it. Is anybody familiar with Barbara Minto? Well, again, I can't see hands or anything, but if you aren't, you definitely should be. Barbara Minto was the first female consultant hired at McKinsey. And she created when she noticed that people were really struggling with having a good framework for writing reports and proposals, which is almost entirely all consultants do. So she took it upon herself to create a system called the pyramid principle that now literally structures how all consultants globally write reports and proposals. So what was different about it? How do we build a pyramid? Start with the conclusion, right? Then back it up. If you think back to how you're taught in high school, at least in the West, to write an essay, you're told, tell them a little bit of an idea after you introduce, give a bunch of evidence, and then conclude, right? Most people in business, in life, don't have that kind of time, right? To wait through your entire presentation before they find out why they should care. Make them care first, right? Then ideas are logically grouped in similar chunks that fall underneath, not just dropped in some sort of chronological or random sequence as they appear in your mind, right? This ends up creating a structure where the reader becomes kind of intuitively engaged in asking questions in their own head from that structure based on the preceding info. This makes them active listeners and more open-minded to what you're presenting. Let's see how. So this is the why it matters pyramid. Start with the conclusion. Tipping points are extreme climate events that we should avoid crossing at all costs. All right. Why? That's the first question that comes out of it. I don't know what they are. Why should I care? Well, they're climate thresholds, which means once we cross them, a bunch of things change and we can't go back, right? Where did that go? They don't unfold gradually. They disappear or they happen immediately, right? Like my bullet point there. And more importantly, they cause more climate stress. So they compound. One falling will contribute significantly to the next one falling, which will contribute to the next one falling. So what are some of them? Let's take a look at 4. Melting permafrost. That's where the ground keeps frozen all the time and keeps dead leaves and things that have died inside it. When that melts, it releases methane, basically farts, earth farts, right? Which accelerates global warming 80 times faster than CO2 emissions, pound for pound. So that's melting right now and melting fast. And by releasing methane, it's speeding up climate change. That leads to Greenland's ice sheets melting into the ocean. That's fresh water, not salt water. So that fresh water makes the ocean less salty, which makes the AMOC less able to run. Therefore, the AMOC collapses. And we have catastrophic regional events. So now we can see from the original conclusion, we should, right? avoid these type of crossing tipping points at all costs because they all go through the same, right? They unreversible, they don't unfold gradually, they happen right away and they hit each other. So now how do we grab attention for it? There's a way you can make this situation even more compelling. So you can increase the effect of a pyramid by introducing it with a situational question, complication, resolution, flow. So this is how you do an introduction to it, because it's still good to give people an introduction. But the whole thing is to say something you know they know when you begin, like a lawyer, right? Climate change is real and accelerating. We've all heard that, right? So the moment I make an obvious statement like that, right? The user goes, so what? Yeah, I know. What can I do about it? What do I care? Right? Is it reason enough to worry about this problem right now, which is what politicians always debate, right? So then you need to answer that with something they may not have considered. Oh, but did you consider that the largest climate tipping points are already showing signs of collapse? Oh, now they want to know what your argument is. Really? How so? And now we don't give them a bunch of information like the standard essay in high school first. We tell them immediately what they should be expecting and then support it. That's the beginning of a new pyramid, right? So we finish the first pyramid, right? With this conclusion, tipping points. When we finish down here, the AMOC collapses, catastrophic regional effects. You all agree it's a big problem. We should do something. Now we have a new pyramid. What do we do about it? So we can chain. First one, what can we do about it then? We must dramatically reduce CO2 emissions to relieve stress on Earth's tipping points. Transition to renew. How do we do that? We transition to renewables, reduce carbon from buildings and industries, invest in carbon sinks, and support climate change policies. Carbon sinks, by the way, are like the Amazon rainforest or wetlands, coral reefs, right? What specific actions can we do then? Build solar and wind and geothermal, electrify infrastructure instead of using furnaces, reduce demand, right? Shut down and have intelligent systems that turn off heating when people aren't in rooms. Reforest land, plant forests where they were cut down, and protect wetlands, right? Carbon markets, so people can have to pay and trade for when they're exporting, producing too much carbon, and climate diplomacy, helping out countries that have less resources to do this by the ones that do, which China does a wonderful job of, by the way. So now the last question is, will that work? Well, 80% of new energy is coming from wind and solar now since 2003. So we had the same amount of energy we were using before. Almost all growth in energy is coming from renewables now. Heat pumps outsold gas furnaces for the first time in the US. Africa's green wall is being restored actively now, a massive forest that was lost ages ago. And clean tech investment topped 1.7 trillion in 2023, the highest ever, and continues to climb, despite some governments wanting to defund and not believe it's real. So each one of these questions naturally flows from the last and from the previous one, right? The what can we do about it comes out. It's easy to keep people engaged with this type of structure. So why does it work so well? They flow from what to why to how. So people know the relevance before they get the details. That why is very important in the middle. They immediately know it's relevant to them. Each layer raises a new question and then answers it, so it keeps them engaged. It's predictable. It has a logical progression, so people feel comfortable as you're explaining it, and it draws the reader in emotionally, so they don't get lost or confused and shut down. And when we chain arguments by linking different of these pyramids together, by assuming that when we finish one, they're going to have another question, we can create an entire proposal, an entire concept, something completely unique that we can lead people down through the tunnel to where we want them to be. And that's going to work whether you're trying to convince your aunt or uncle that your job is relevant, or you're trying to convince your parents they should let you move out, or you're trying to convince your boss that he should give you the resources and time to produce the new standard uh, brand kit for your company that everybody will be able to use, right? So that's the full framework: sketch to clarify, color to energize, and shade to move people. But what does it look like when we apply it to the real world? Well, I have a case study. This is one of the websites I just delivered in the last month. So sketch, color, shade, and action. Life365.eu is an Italian e-commerce platform that sells electronics, including solar equipment, to businesses in the EU. They asked us to help improve how they presented their business online. They were struggling a little bit with not just They knew what they did, but they weren't having a great job of explaining what they did to other people. And their website was a little bit archaic, as you can see here. So this is a section that comes at the bottom of the page to kind of give a quick introduction to the business that isn't on the About Us. And I just want a quick question. Arnold, since you're here, what would you say is maybe a problem with this design, since I'm not able to see everybody else to ask?
That seems a bit outdated, perhaps.
Yeah,
Some of the visuals, big chunk of text that I'm not sure I'm going to fully read, probably scan
yeah,
through. Yeah.
yeah. Is it easy to scan?
The bullet points are, the rest not so much. My eyes are very easily attracted to the bullet points instead. So,
Do you know what the company does? If I didn't tell you ahead of time, I'm
no,
realizing now I should have just shown this instead of explaining the company first.
no, no idea.
No, exactly. Their first sentence has the SPA to make it completely legal, which is not needed at all, is a leading company in the European market. That's good to know. Doing what? Specializing in connecting Europe and Asia. Okay, so is it a consultancy? Thanks to our import-export contacts. Okay, we're dealing with projects, I think, maybe logistics with the main manufacturers in China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Great, Asia. We guarantee efficient and widespread distribution of products throughout Italy. What products? Are they a distributor then? They're not. They're an e-commerce platform. So it feels corporate and vague to begin with. There's no visual hook or emotional spark, no clear structure to it, like aside from bullet points. It reads like a resume, not a brand pitch, right? And it isn't guiding the user to act, which is probably the biggest problem. So they don't even know where they want to tell people to go. Even if I was very into this company, right, and I wanted to engage with them, I have to go back up the website and explore to try and find where I would do something next. There's no button at the bottom of this page. So, how did we improve it? So we took a look at this. We structured it a little differently. We made it more modern. But the main things are we clarified the positioning. Right out of the gate, if you're wondering, it's Italy's B2B enablement platform for electronics. Not just, in fact, most of their clients don't come to their website. They have a lot of APIs that allow them to connect from the back end to people's own systems. So when an installer needs to search or a retailer wants to search if they need a product, if it's not in their warehouse, they can see if it's in this one and it'll be delivered in 2 days. So it's really an enablement platform. Light 365 EU is a European B2B platform providing electronics from verified manufacturers across dozens of industries. Right there. We know what they do. With over 2 decades of cross-border expertise, we simplify procurement by combining sourcing, logistics, and digital tools into one ecosystem. So now we know exactly what they do. We have bullet points for pain points here, right? Fast delivery, verified products, they're not going to have quality issues, intuitive platform, easy to use and connected, and then local support. They don't have to talk with suppliers and manufacturers outside the country. We use the structure to do this as the Minto pyramid here, if you look at it. What is it? Right out of the gate. Why does it matter? How does it help? And then finally, the CTA to tell them where to go. Right? Discover who we are, what we do, and why we're changing the way Europe sources electronics. So, final thoughts. Sketch, strip it down, simplify your core idea, color, add emotion, make them see it, feel it, and care, and shade, give it structure, and lead your audience to action. Simple but powerful, and like any craft, this takes practice. And the last thing I'll say before we clue up then is that this wasn't an easy thing for me to do. I didn't read these couple of books and then immediately become better at communicating. I was literally on a call with someone last night telling the longest story that not just her, but my boyfriend were saying, my goodness, like, that was so meandering and pedantic. Why could you not do that quicker? So it takes practice, right? But after noticing I had this problem and being concerted, and particularly when I'm communicating with clients or giving a presentation, preparing well, right? Now I've realized that I wasn't just confusing people before, I was preventing them from being able to get my help, which as a consultant is terrible. So I started to focus on only what they needed to hear, hyper focused on that, right? That shift changed everything. faster buy-in from clients and colleagues and my CEO, smarter questions coming back from them, not just yawning and nodding through the presentation, and ended up being repeat work and re-sign clients. These guys are probably going to come back for another big project with us right away. So this isn't just a content framework, it's the foundation now for how I lead and communicate. And it was the difference between explaining something and getting people behind it. So it's been very valuable to me, and I hope you guys can find some use in it as well. Happy to share the PPT with anybody that wants it after. Feel free to give me an email to contact@inquill.com, and I'll shoot you back the PPT right away or send it along to Arnaud and them to share as well. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Jared-T. Oh, we have a question. Yes, Arnaud.
Yes, thank you very much, Jared. It was I've heard of the Minto Pyramid. I think it's the book
Hmm.
that they offer here in Alibaba. Actually, after after you spend a couple of years in Alibaba, that's one of the gifts they
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 should give it to you first when
give
they
to you.
hire.
Uh, I should pitch for that actually. You know,
It's
in the
it's a,
box
it's a
of
really good.
ideas.
It's I have to be honest. It's written in the 70s, so it's clear, but it's
Yes.
not the most easy to permeate right away, right? There's a lot of things to digest because she also explains
Mhm.
how to use it to like discover when your thoughts are not complete yet. Same thing as the Feynman
Mhm.
method. So like knowing which parts you're missing, even if you don't know really what the problem is, but you just have a lot of data and you're trying to figure out what to do with it, you can go back and start creating a pyramid around it by deciding what type of data that would be and where it would land. You don't have your
Mhm.
conclusion from the data yet. You continue to build that out and find more parts underneath it, and then eventually the top of the pyramid becomes clearer as well.
Mm.
But it is an intense read, I'll say that much. It's not something you can leaf through on a beach.
That is very true. I also don't think I'm gonna read it on the beach, but it's a personal preference. But anyway, we've got Jared. We've got a few questions for you. Allow me
Yeah,
to read them to you. Okay. Perhaps we can start with the questions from Danny. How to know when you prioritize action or education in your content? Do you push for action before they have been sold on the value?
never, never.
Never.
So people act when it's the next natural conclusion, right? If they don't have information about your product and you're just trying to send them a quick buy now, clickbait, this deal will stop in the next day, buy right now. If I don't know what the content is, if I don't even really know what the product or the service is and that I need it, it doesn't matter that it's ending in a day. It's completely inconsequential to me. But for educational content, to really get in the weeds and like explain and develop an understanding, say for instance, for a blog or something, there's a specific point in the journey for that. But whether the user crosses that point or not depends on how you've structured the user journey. And giving people again too much information or long form content when they need a quick answer, like a help article or just a quick FAQ or just delivery times or even just the price. Putting
Mm.
more education content between them and that isn't going to help either. So you have to create kind of a Hydra path where they can move through different areas. Lots of CTAs. People say in campaigns for emails, you should have one in places. But when people land on your site, they should have many different areas they can go to and land at, right? So that they can naturally find the path that their interest and information is carving for them. And if
Mm.
they have a new idea that isn't answered there, they know where to go to find it. That's what UX designers do, right? Thank God for UX designers. And then once they have enough information, having those CTAs available and consistent across the site for them to act at that moment when they feel comfortable, that's when they will. So I hope
Mm.
that helps. Thanks, Danny.
Danny, I see that your hand is up. Perhaps you would like to react to that?
Yeah, yeah, no, really appreciate the answer, Jared. Can everyone hear me okay, right?
Yeah, I can hear
Super
you.
cool. Yeah, I think what I struggle with, because I obviously do B2B, it's nothing about B2C, is the balance between the education or the CTA, right? And
Mhm.
I find it sometimes I always hear you need to have as much CTA as possible. So for example, on the website, you want to say, oh, click here for a quotation. Oh, like learn more, right? But then it sometimes
Mm.
feels like, is it too much? And is it almost like pushing them away from doing that? So there's another example on LinkedIn. If you post some really good educational content and you get someone below, they comment, it's like, oh, thanks for that. Really great. It's like at that point you say, oh, cool. Do you want to let's talk? Do you want to know about my offering? So it's like trying to find the balance between just education and CTA and when to pull the trigger on that CTA, I think it's really tough. And I want to hear your insight.
I think the trick with that is that you don't want to come off as salesy. Because what people interpret salesy as is this person's a hustler and they're just interested in me to take something, right? They want my
Yeah.
money. That's it, right? And anytime you give somebody that impression, they're going to close off. Even if they still need your service, even if they're still going to engage with you, it's going to make the sales process so much harder. So the best way to lead from it is from a version of generosity with your time and with your information and with your understanding. So don't give them information they haven't asked for, but that's the power of this pyramid principle, is that you can
Mm.
create a conclusion. You can say something dramatic, just like, oh yeah, well, I mean, what you need to do is reduce your costs. And they'll be like, great. How?
Yeah.
I know I need to reduce my costs. It's like, no, you're worrying about getting more revenue. Your problem is your costs. You're spending too much time doing this. And they're like, really? How so? And then you have that answer ready for them. So you give them the exact amount of information to keep them wanting more, right? Like over polluted. That was one thing about Chinese design when I first came to Toronto. Oh my God, it made me really hard to deal with. Is there really ads popping up everywhere and from
Yeah.
brands that have nothing to do with it? And people were comfortable with that because China is very fast at consuming information, right? They can scan things very quickly, so they become more used to filtering out things that are not important, right? But for me, it was overwhelming. There's just so many ads, so many buttons, so many icons, so many things, right? So you have to, again, know your audience and you have to be able to
Yeah.
check and have feedback with them. So I think if you're
Yeah.
looking at like sales content and things, even the LinkedIn example, don't start with thanks for commenting, buy my product. Build a relationship, invest your time into discussing with
Yeah.
them. Most importantly, ask questions. It's the one thing you can do when people are live, right? That you can't do with content. And then document
Yeah.
your questions and
100%.
make sure that they're answered online too, because people probably have them elsewhere.
All
Nice.
right.
Good answer.
I think, I mean, jumping on this, a great follow-up question for that would be the question from Javid. Is hate
Mhm.
or bad emotion based connection is still considered a good marketing move, like clickbait, gossip, or fake info, moving one group of people against the other? And
It's
he
effective.
adds, because it is uses 90% of social media feed and news, right? We were talking about
It's
LinkedIn.
effective. Yeah, it's effective, and it's effective because of how the brain works. All right, brain chemistry. I'm not going to go down into that. I'll try and make it a very simple analogy, but the part of our brain that overrides other things is the brain stem, the reptilian brain, right? Oh, I can't remember the exact word for it right now, and I'm not going to embarrass myself on a recording trying to say it. But either way, the bottom of the brain. So that's the part that governs your fight or flight responses, right? So I want to get something, I want to eat, I want to attack that, I want to kill, or I want to run away, right? So those type of reactions are visceral, right? And when you feel excluded from a group, right, which is what people saying something that offends you or triggers you or
Mhm.
scares you does. It makes you feel vulnerable and possibly part of an out group. Um, you respond to that it takes over other operations in your brain. It shuts off the
Mhm.
front part that's trying to think. So people will engage quickly and respond. So what's actually happened in social media is the people designing it have prioritized the wrong signals. All right. So if you do need social media as a core part of your content, scaring people. I work in climate change. I just scared a whole bunch of you, probably. I hope you do care about the AMOC now. I really do. It's a horrifying thing. But at the end of the day, if you leave people feeling desperate or lost or frustrated, then they shut down, right? And that's not the emotion you want to create. If you leave them feeling infuriated, they start voting for people who want to deport and kick everyone out who's different from them, right? Fear mongering
Mhm.
doesn't help in the long run. It's a good short-term part. But at the end of the day, wherever they land or move after it, if you are using something that triggers a fight or flight or fear or frustration, you better have a good answer on the other side of it that will help people understand how you counteract that. Or else all you end up with is a bunch of people screaming in a chat that gets nothing done and just entrenches them further in their problems.
Mm.
Opinions. So yeah, it's effective, but it's not always strategically clever to do, basically. And you better have a good plan around how to integrate it if you do. Better to avoid
Yeah,
it. Right? Encourage people, don't discourage them.
that's great. Jared, I would like to come back to the Minto pyramid framework. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
one of the level of the pyramid is to basically go into details, provide details,
Mm-hmm.
on the topic at hand. My question is, how do you decide what level of detail your audience needs? If you provide too much details, you can bore them to death. If you don't provide enough, you miss your point. So, what's your take on this?
Well, believe me, this is something I'm still learning and working on and practicing. But in principle, you go back to the sketch, right? And then the amount of extra detail you should add should reach beyond clarity into emotion, right? But you need to have a plan for what the next question you want that information to make them naturally arrive at in their head. That's the real power of the pyramid principle, right?
Mhm.
You could have 20 data sets, right, of information coming in for how a website has improved. They're all radically different from how much they've improved or how large it is, but it just shows the website's improved. You're trying to say we should do more of X, and you don't really know yet what X is, and you have all this extra data. When you find the ones that do work together, that seem to go up in consort, right, that are coordinated, and when one goes up, the other ones go up, group them. Now that's one
Mhm.
type of topic. The other ones that were impacted less is a different one. Then when you focus on them and look at them, it's going to become easier to chunk the information and then make that logically lead or help you decide then which ones are more valuable. Maybe the higher metrics have been high all the time. The minor improvement is actually the thing that's changing the results that are going up. So once you determine that, that'll help lead what it is. But the effect is always reduce it until they're almost confused again, right? You
Mhm.
want them asking questions. It's very rare nowadays, except in cold emails and things, where people are going to engage or go down a tunnel and act without having a direct interaction with your company in some way, shape, or form. Certainly not in B2B. They're always going to talk to you. And if you're trying to convince someone in your team to do something, you want to get them asking questions out loud. So give a little bit less information than what's needed, and at best, they're going to come back and demand why you arrived at that conclusion or where did that come from. And then you have a chance to add more. Plus, you have more information. You know they're interested now, right? They're
Mhm.
engaging again. They're clicking on something else. They're moving further down the pipeline. Then you give them more info, right? So the default is try less whenever less is possible. But if you feel that it's not leading to another question, then it's not enough, right? It needs to group together and drive them towards another conclusion or curiosity, basically.
Mhm. You got it. Okay, I had another question for you, a bit perhaps on the other side of the spectrum, which is what signals tell you that your message is still too complex, and call for further simplification or clarity? What signals?
I'll tell you personally from my life, if I'm presenting something or explaining something or talking through a problem, if I start seeing people, I try watch very closely, which is kind of a little bit disconcerting where most people listening are not using their video right now. I try and watch for where people's focus is. If they're not looking at me, if they start looking away, if they start getting down, you're probably giving too much detail and you've probably lost them. So that's the first signal. If you're looking at the
Mm,
people, if they're not leaning in, they're not making eye contact, and they're not reacting when you drop
mm,
the points when you're supposed to be transitioning to the next part, then you don't have them, right? If it's with your content, then you're going to have to look at how people can engage with it, right? So if it's a website and you're trying to build a blog, you want to hit a lot of
mm,
SEO, you want to put a lot of keywords in it, but most of all, you want to solve a concern and a question they have. But it's a very complex, very multifaceted concern. You could do easily 3,000 words on it. Well, maybe that is actually the solution. But you definitely want to make it easier for people to transition and move through. But most importantly, if you do that and you send some people to that campaign and some people are engaging, make sure there's points where they can jump to other information. A good too long did not read at the beginning with buttons for more info that jump further down. When they click on that, you're getting feedback. This is what people are most concerned about. I should do another article about this, right? When they ask you questions, if the question is for clarification, then you're likely not giving enough information, right? If the question is for something else that's not being provided, not that they don't understand what you're defining, but it's the next logical question, like, okay, so what do we do about it? That's when you know you've given just the right amount of info, right? In fact, try and trim it down the next time you present, because this person might be in marketing and now the CEO needs to hear it and he wants to hear only 1/3 of what was told to the other guy. So the next time you present, trim it again. If they ask, open the new PPT and go back to the higher detail that worked. That's it. So trim, just cut everything. Just take a chainsaw and take it all off. If you can cut down, the only thing you should be clear cutting is words. If you can remove more, then put back, right? Elon Musk did a terrible job of the whole Doge thing. You shouldn't do this with employees, but when it comes to efficiencies in companies and in your content, cut everything first. And when it's not working anymore because you chopped all its legs off, start putting legs back on it. It does not need 1,000 legs. It won't walk well.
Okay, that gave me a lot to think, honestly. Yes. Thanks a lot for sharing. I mean, those two framework, they are definitely easy to grasp and so useful. So thank you so much to for sharing it. You mentioned that you can make your deck available.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, by all means, anybody that wants to screenshot right now, I'll put it back out. I'll be posting once the video comes out and linking from LinkedIn. I want to use this as a bit of a chance to connect with more people. Of course, that's why we all do these things. But yeah, if you have questions, you want to follow up, I am more than happy to share my time, as anybody that knows me will attest to. So if you want to just jump on a call and describe and talk about this or struggles you're having, I'm happy. Right. But most importantly, I will circulate this to Arnaud and them as well, so they can share it, and feel free to leave any comments or questions that you had on the posts as they come out on LinkedIn, and we can keep the discussion going. Because I can't stress this again at the end. We are in some very precarious times, my friends, in so many ways, and we can't get there alone. If there's anything I can
Yes.
say, we have to find a way to work together. And if people can't understand what you want to do, they're not going to work with you. So we should all work together towards having a better home, right?
Mhm.
No war.